Today we're going to be talking about modeling inequalities. So last week we did modeling equations, that was with the equal sign, but this time we're going to throw in that inequality sign. So same type of process, but we're going to have inequalities. We're on page 69 in your notebook, so go ahead and pause your video so that you can set up your notebook so that it looks just like mine. This is your warm-up. It says solve the following inequality and graph that on the number line. So this is a two-step inequality, and there's a couple of ways that I can do that. I can use those do and undo boxes if you're more familiar with that and feel more comfortable. Or I could do those circles. Or I could just solve it without using either one of those. So go ahead and do that, and then don't forget to put it on your number line as well. You may have to refer back to your notes from last week. This is your learning goal. It says given a model, create and solve an inequality. And then your language goal, you're going to write the steps in which you would take to solve these inequalities. This is example A, so you're going to need to go ahead and get this paper out. Example A gives you a model. Of course, just like last time it had an equal sign, but this time it has an inequality sign. So that's really the only different step that we're taking. And so this has 4 negatives on the left side. So I have -4. Then I bring down that inequality sign, and then I have 4 x's on the right side. So I'm going to put 4x. But I actually have to solve this, so I'm going to rewrite this. I have -4 is less than or equal to 4x. But you guys are really familiar with seeing that x on the left-hand side, remember that? And so since we're familiar with seeing that on the left-hand side, I want to go ahead and switch this. So I have 4x, and what's really important is that you look at your inequality. Because the mouth is going towards my 4x, this point is right on my -4. So I actually need to switch that sign if I'm going to switch my inequality around, which I do suggest. So in order for me to solve this, this is a one-step equation. What I know is in between this 4 and this x is multiplication. And what the opposite of multiplication is division. So I want to divide on both sides. So I know with x is greater than or equal to -4 divided by 4, which is -1. Okay, so I got to check my answer now. So what I have to do is I have to take this original inequality. So I have -4 is less than or equal to 4x. And in place of that x, I'm going to put this -1. So I have -4 is less than or equal to 4 times -1. So -4 is less than or equal to 4 times -1, which is -4. So now I have to read this again. I have -4 is less than or equal to -4, and that is a true statement because it is equal to each other. So my solution would be x is greater than or equal to -1. So that's any number that's greater than -1. Example B, I'm going to go ahead and highlight my inequality. Example B is another modeling equation. And so I have to create the inequality or the equation that goes with it. So first let's start off by doing our greater than or equal to symbol. Well, on this side I have 6, but those 6 are negatives, so I have -6 is greater than or equal to this other side, which has a couple of things going on. This other side has 4 x's, and it also has 2 circles, and these 2 circles are negative, so -2. So in my process, I'm going to rewrite this. So I have -6 is greater than or equal to 4x minus 2. But I know that you guys are a lot more familiar with that x being on the left-hand side, so let's go ahead and switch it. 4x minus 2. And I have -6. But anytime I have to switch these, I have to switch my inequality as well. So 4x minus 2 is less than or equal to negative 6. And if I were to read this backwards, it says negative 6 is greater than or equal to 4x minus 2, which is exactly what it says on top. So now I have to solve this. Remember that there are two ways that you can solve these. You could do your circles, which I know that you're a lot more familiar with, so this is what I'm going to use. But know that you could also use your do and undo boxes, or solve it just by itself. But I'm going to use the circles because I know that you are a lot more familiar with that. So I'm going to put this x here because I always start with my variable or my letter. And then what's happening with my x is I'm multiplying that by 4. And then x times 4 is just 4x. And what's happening next in my equation is I'm subtracting 2. And 4x minus 2 is just 4x minus 2. And that's all equal to negative 6, or whatever's on the other side of the inequality. So I look up here and I do the opposite of minus 2, which is to add 2. Well, negative 6 plus 2, since they're different signs, remember that I actually have to subtract them. So I have negative 6 plus 2. But if you notice, they're different, and so I subtract them. And so 6 minus 2 gives me 4. And then I go look, and I see my bigger number was 6, and it was negative. So this should be negative 4. Then I look at the top, and I do the opposite of times 4, which is to divide by 4. And negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. If I didn't know if it should be negative or positive, I should draw that triangle. And I was doing a negative divided by a positive, and so my answer was negative. So it's negative 1. So up here, I'm going to write x is less than or equal to negative 1, and I'm going to box that in. And so now I want to check my answer. So I'm going to start with the original equation. Negative 6 is greater than or equal to 4x minus 2. In place of this x, I'm going to put negative 1. So negative 6 is greater than or equal to 4 times negative 1 minus 2. And so all I have to do is negative 6 is greater than or equal to 4 times negative 1 is negative 4, and then minus 2. I'm just bringing the rest of my equation down. So then I have negative 6 is greater than or equal to negative 4 minus 2. I'm looking and I'm seeing that they both have the same sign. And so I actually have to add them. And I want to keep the sign. So I have 4 plus 2 is 6. And then I want to keep that sign a negative. So then I have to reread it. Negative 6 is greater than or equal to negative 6. And that is true because they are equal to each other. So my solution is going to be x is less than or equal to negative 1. I could also write that negative 1 is greater than or equal to x, however way you want to write that. So go ahead and glue these notes into your notebook before you get started, and then you have an assignment. You have 10 questions to get done today. And you have enough time to get those done, so make sure that you're not talking as much and working more.